Okay, so this is a setup for this introductory scenario 6 onto Bayeux. Now the Allies set up first, fairly limited in their setup. These three groups have to start within 3 hexes of these 3 key points. So they basically start off on these this major eastern road leading through Aujoux, through Hill 103 and Saint Pierre on the way to Tilly-sur-Celles and Lingèvre over here. This is taking place again on the 9th of June from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it was on this day that basically this force captured Hill 103 and Saint Pierre. In this scenario, both sides select an objective. The Allies can pick from, I think, 3 along here, and then the Germans pick from Elon, Condé-sur-Celles, or Ducy up here. But because I'm soloing this, I've just basically picked the central objective for each side. So the Germans here, the Allies here, but really this is part of a sort of a small German counterattack. But I mean, the Allies are really trying to expand their beachhead, so I'm putting a lot of pressure on the Allies to capture their objective. And if they don't capture this, really the Germans win. The scenario rules state that if neither side achieves their objective, the Germans win. If both sides achieve their objective, the Allies win. And certainly if the Allies can capture Tilly-sur-Celles, they'll be doing quite well. Now the Germans start off with Kampfgruppe Schütze set up along this road, really centered around Tilly-sur-Celles. And the only concern I have here is that their right flank is really exposed, particularly as this is where the Allies are coming down here. Fontenay's is undefended, and I can't figure out why that's the case. But they're limited by being able to set up within 1 hex of that road. They can place 3 bocage markers, which they've done in the hedgerows. Again, focus on this sort of Tilly-sur-Celles and eastern edge of their position. The western edge is relatively lightly defended. It's a few infantry companies with a mortar, because there's this assault force moving up this road. Now what happens here is we roll a dice, which I've already done. We place a hex on 92041, which is here, and then all other assault force units must follow to the south. So the Germans will be driving up here almost straight to Condé-sur-Celles, and well, geez, they're just up the road from it there. And then Allied reinforcements will come onto the board at 11 a.m. Quite a lot of Allied reinforcements. They'll be coming on from this point way up in the northwest. You can see this force will be driving down here. They also have this naval support, which I haven't placed on the naval board yet, but they would then be sort of counterattacking that German force wherever they may be. So the line will probably shift, in fact, quite close to these starting Allied positions. I have put the Allies in column, and the Allies, I don't know what happened, who moves first. It might be a random chit draw for the first turn. Very interesting terrain here. So very, generally, a lot of ridges, as you can see, in these hedgerows, which block line of sight. So a lot of these positions, these infantry positions, well, they're only adjacent firing, of course, but they don't have long lines of sight. It's really a maximum of 2 hexes. So the mortars, of course, with their 4 hex range are also limited. Out here on the right, this is where I put the anti-tank gun, and in fact there may be some other direct fire units as well. They have, so this unit here can fire out to here, has a range of 3. Another gun here, which has a slightly better range out in the right flank here. This is why I've placed these units out here, because they have slightly longer fields of fire. The artillery park sets up just behind the lines here. This is another concern if the Allies move around through here. I don't know what to do about this German right flank. It's historically, it's where the Allies attacked. It's also where the Germans are very vulnerable at the start. So that is, the starting setup for this scenario. We will see how it all plays out. Okay, so I've only just had the first activation, Kampfgruppe Gerhard, but it's a pretty important one, so I want to just pause and point out what's happened. You know, those units at the front raced down. These are the recon units, and they actually passed to the left and have set up. I think our first unit set up out here near Blairy, out to the far northwest of Condé-sur-Celles, northwest of that objective, to block at least two of these main roads, from which the Allied reinforcements will be coming on their way to, well, the southeast. Subsequent units, which include, I think these are Panthers, could be wrong, have moved in to occupy key ground around Condé-sur-Celles. So the Germans have seized their primary objective. They hold their primary objective with some pretty heavy armoured units. The Allies didn't get a chance to fire any opportunity fire in this area. They did have line of sight, but there was no, they moved in just from behind. There was no movement within that line of sight. And then, perhaps most critically, out here on the right, we brought anti-tank unit and some more Panthers out here, sitting just behind that ridge, just on that eastern flank of those German positions, holding the place where I was worried the Allies could outflank. You can just have a look. That's a pretty strong defensive unit. -3 armour modifier, -4 to the anti-tank unit. And they're holding up just behind the ridge. They are in open terrain, but the ridge and their innate armour gives them, well, this unit here, a -6 modifier. This one's still in column, didn't have enough movement points. It just kind of reached there with its last movement point. Didn't have enough to get out of column. Hoping to do so shortly. Elsewhere, some more anti-tank holding forward ground, occupying just a little bit of an advanced position near Bayeux. And all the infantry, you can't quite see them, they're just off the map here, but they're much slower. And they're just moving up behind to kind of along those main roads to see what happens. It's an important first turn because it Germans have occupied the objective. They now hold these positions. Looking here, there's a bit of a gap down the middle here through Nantes, but good lines of fire through this area for at least some of these units. I'm just looking now. This is a direct HE unit and two dual purpose. Would have been nice to have one of these up a bit further, but that's okay. We're protecting the flank, holding our centre, and occupying key crossroads in that area. Okay, just at the end of the first turn, and it's been a very interesting, very dynamic first turn. So the Germans went first, as I showed you, and then the next chit drawn was the 50th Division activation chit. Now they come on the board, their reinforcements come on the board, and they blinded that command half track, and then immediately started moving down this road. You can see through Nonani, as I was worried about, as the Germans were worried about, and then threatening the German position in Condé-sur-Celles. In fact, they eliminated this unit. You can see all this armour moving down and around those main roads and almost splitting, threatening this advanced German position, whilst moving behind that position at Condé-sur-Celles, giving good lines of fire to those Germans in those town and village hexes. At the same time, the armour out, so this is where sort of their command points were spent. Out on the east, the armour is very slowly moving up, keeping out of line of sight of those Germans in this area. They're not allowed to, with that division activation, that first action, basically spending all our command points here and not doing much out on the right, just slowly moving up, and the infantry moving around that flank. Now the Germans had their activations after this at least, and they've decided to move their defences forward to a slightly better position alongside this ridge. In particular, you can see those Panthers, anti-tank guns that are already there, some half tracks being moved up, mortar and a flak gun, prolonging the I think that's an anti-tank gun. And starting to move the infantry out of their position on the sort of the Tilly-Seychelles road and move forward to sort of more advanced hedge rows up here. This infantry is still moving up the road. There was some counterfire. The Germans trying to do some damage, but nothing happened. No, wait, sorry, there was one suppression way up here, just off the map, off the camera, and that was about it. So it's really kind of, you can see how these forces are really going to focus their efforts around this area here. This is just sort of a setting up turn. The Allies certainly getting the first hits on the Germans and dealing some morale damage. That's the end of that first 11 a.m. turn. Okay, so it's now the end of the second turn, and this is a very quiet turn because the 50th Division didn't have any command points left. They couldn't purchase any chits to put them in the cup. So they pretty much had their direct command, which they couldn't do, and then their divisional activation chit, which they couldn't do much with, and which came out very late in the turn. So as you can see, not much has changed in terms of Allied movement. They've been trying to move through advance without getting into the line of sight of those German units. The Germans, on the other hand, had a lot of command points and were able to activate both the Kampfgruppe Gerhardt and Kampfgruppe Schulze, and you can see they've moved up along these two routes. This is the original defensive line. They're slowly pushing this infantry forward. Naval fire, placing some barrage markers, but not much else happening. No damage through this fire. A slight shift in German armour. You can see they've moved around to Kashi. And yeah, again, moving out of these defensive positions up the road here. Very quiet turn, not much fire taking place at all. A little bit of an artillery exchange this turn, but next turn should be busier as both divisions have command points to spend on placing some activations into the cup. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, well, this next turn was much more dynamic, and the turn was really very fortunate for the Allies, and I attribute that mainly to the order in which these activation chips came out. So first of all, Panzer Division activation chip came out, and there wasn't a lot they could do. They placed a couple of Allied units under light barrage markers up here, which, what did it do? It enabled a few reinforcements to move up into this area here, Condé-Seychelles, but not a lot. Then we have this series of Allied activations, which was critical. 231st Brigade activated. They sort of began to shift in here. They placed barrage markers, indirect artillery fire on these German units. These are, again, those Panthers in this area. Then they very boldly brought Nottingham Yeomanry, I think, these armoured companies out into the open to fire upon those obscured Germans, and start to inflict some cohesion hits on those very strong armoured companies. Then we had the naval chit, and whilst ineffective in causing damage, they're placing these barrage markers all over the place. They're blocking the line of sight of so many Germans in this whole area. With that done, the 50th Division chit came out, and this enables all these units to move around quite freely, as long as they're not getting in the line of sight of these Germans. But that's basically, you can see all this infantry up here. They're just outside the line of sight, because with the barrage marker, line of sight's reduced to adjacent hexes, and so they're just sitting outside that line of sight, ready to pounce. The big move here, though, was the 22nd Armoured Brigade's movement through this gap. There's Germans along here, and there were Germans defending this area here. There still are some there. And the 22nd Armoured Brigade, you can see they've formed a line through here. They drove through here. They didn't get too far during this, or did they? They got a fair bit through this division activation. They drove through here. A couple of secondary activations to fire upon the Germans here. But then the very next shit was that 22nd Armoured Formation activation, and this was critical. They poured fire into the Germans along here. They eliminated a very strong Panther unit, I think that is. And then they continued their drive around here. So they're using this road. I'll just move these chits off. Excuse the lighting here. They move through the open terrain here, jump onto this road, and then use this road to come around to the back side of where the Germans have just pushed through. So they've got a strong 22nd Armoured Brigade company here, a recon unit here. They've captured Lingevre in the southwest, threatening Tilly-sur-Seulles, and along the way doing a lot of damage to these effectively blinded German units, a lot of cohesion hits. They are suffering a little bit themselves. 2 cohesions there. These guys tried to assault unsuccessfully. That's why they suffered that. But you can see they've kind of cut off those advanced recon units. There is actually an anti-tank gun up here as well, blinded. They have then pinched these Germans along this road. This is a bold move by the Allies. They've just moved into this open terrain. No defense modifiers here or here. They've just come out shooting, driving out in the open to try and inflict hits on those Germans. And they've been pretty successful. Again, only 1 unit eliminated, but a lot of cohesion hits along the line and really threatening that German position, including their hold of Tilly-sur-Seulles. The big problem, however, despite this bold Allied move, is these barrage markers are going to be removed at the end of the turn, and I don't know if they can repeat this quite fortuitous draw or series of draws. The other point is they haven't captured their objective. The Germans have. So the Germans continue to hold Condé-sur-Seulles. The Allies have not captured Tilly-sur-Seulles, and I don't know if they can capture this with the bocage. Where should that be? It should be about there, I think, in 1 turn. What's this unit up here? Sorry, I've forgotten. Not the 231st, it's the 151st Brigade way up here. They haven't really left those defensive positions. The Lancers are not game to push against these Germans here. We did, however, force the retirement of one of the armoured units, which has moved along here. They followed the road just to defend this road towards Tilly-sur-Seulles. So, yeah, it was a good move by the Germans to bring around here. They're being pinched, and if this scenario were to go for a few more turns, well, it's still got a way to go. Let's see what happens, and I don't want to jump to any conclusions. Okay, this is the end of the 1700 turn, and nothing too momentous happened. 50th Division activated early, rolled poorly on the command choice, on their command roll, so didn't get many command points, and the naval chit came out. As usual, placing the Germans under barrage markers, which really prevents them moving, because as soon as the proximity of these 22nd Armoured prevents them moving, because as soon as they move anywhere, there's a lot of units who can potentially opportunity fire, and they're just too afraid to move out of their pretty good defensive positions. They're in sort of, what are they? Wood hexes, hedgerows, and towns and villages, which gives some good defence modifiers for those mechanised infantry or motorised infantry. Then, so the barrages go down, and then we had the Comfort Gerhardt marker. Again, they didn't do a great deal. They're all under these barrage markers. I don't know if they did much at all. Maybe a sort of couple of artillery shots fired on the British in various little places here. One very important development was the withdrawal of that advanced recon. You may recall the Germans sent these recon units up here. They were placed under barrage, but then they withdrew from that position, and they've tried to block any more Allied units coming down through Elon down this road, so cutting off these more advanced Allies units who were threatening Tilly's cells. Then we had 151st and the 22nd Armoured. The 151st finally pushing out here. They did suppress some of these units, but no sort of permanent damage on any of them. But during that suppression, we did have a recon unit which rushed around this road and captured Saint-Pierre, one of the historical outcomes, and also threatening to Tilly's cells. So you can see the British 50th Division, actually these are mainly 22nd Armoured. That's the 8th Armoured Brigade up here, and the 22nd Armoured Recon up here pressing on Tilly's cells. So they've kind of, although now these three advanced units are largely cut off from the rest of the units and out of command. But it's nice to at least get a foothold in the town. And the 22nd Armoured Brigade activated. They're causing a few little hits, cohesion hits, but running low on command points, so not a great deal they can do. And then no real movement. They're really cut off here with the presence of these units. They could push through, but it'd be risky. These are, again, anti-tank. There's an anti-tank unit here, and they occupy those key roads moving south, so they'd have to kind of, I don't know how they do it, cross over here, get into column and jump over the ridge and down here. It could be done, but they've just been holding their ground, trying to push the Germans out of Condé-sur-Cels. And then finally, Kampfgruppe activated out here on the right. Not a great deal they can do either. A few shots out here on the right, and I don't think there's any effect out there either. Both sides are really selecting their defensive terrain carefully, making it very difficult to even cause a cohesion hit. The closest we came was one of these units. We came very close to eliminating I think it was these infantry, nearly eliminated. They were one off, but that was it. So, yeah, little bits and pieces happening, but where we are now, I don't think the Allies are going to be able to capture Tilly-sur-Cels. There's only one turn left, and it's going to start to get dark. Whereas the Germans are, at present, holding their objective and doing quite well. All right, we'll see how things end up. Okay, well, it's the end of the scenario, and you can probably see nothing much changed in that last turn. The Allies couldn't afford too many activations, so they activated the 22nd Armoured Brigade, who fired on these German positions with minimal effect, really. The Germans happy to hold their ground, and excuse me, not many other command points spent with the direct command or divisional activations, because there's not much more that the Allies can do in this situation. So it ends with the Germans holding Condé-sur-Cels, holding their position, holding their objective, and the Allies failing to capture theirs. So another German victory. Reflecting on this, I think I'm really struggling to attack. The Germans rushed in, seized this good defensive terrain here. There's this sort of like hedgerows, a couple of towns, some more hedgerows down here, I think. And the Allies just couldn't. They inflicted 2 casualties. You can see these 2 units here were destroyed pretty early on, but then they struggled. I think I definitely made a mistake sending the infantry out of column too early. They were kind of, in a sense, forced into it because of the general reconnaissance units that were placed up here, but which just really slowed them down. They should have kept moving and tried to drive further south, maybe follow the 22nd Armoured through here or something, I don't know. These aren't mechanised infantry, they're just on foot. Maybe these units out here should have done more, excuse me. They should have done more. It was very quiet out here. They never even hit this ridge. Maybe they should have had a go at it. But once the Germans moved in here with their first activation and occupied that ground, especially with their heavy Panthers, there was nothing nothing budging them. Even with all these 22nd Armoured, so many units were firing on this space with just minimal effect. I don't know what to do, what more I could have done to dislodge them. Again, this is hedgerow. Artillery was not very effective. Armour was not very effective. Maybe we needed some infantry to come in. Maybe we needed to launch some more assaults. Happy to get any feedback from anyone who has any advice on what I can do better. What else? Yeah, Germans on the defensive just seem to do very well. Occupy that key ground and then hold back the Allies. On the reverse side, these ridges here, the hill. Yeah, very interesting. It'd be interesting to place one again. I do think I made a lot of tactical mistakes here. As I said, with the infantry, maybe I should have just been more aggressive with the Allies. They really do need to drive south towards Tilly-sur-Seulles. They're a long way from, apart from these few sort of advanced reconnaissance units, 2 recon units, one down the bottom here, one over to the right, and this armoured unit here. Apart from those, they're not close to Tilly-sur-Seulles. So there you have it. That is the end of a very interesting scenario, introductory scenario 6 on to Bayeux, another German victory. And incidentally, of the 6 introductory scenarios I played, all 6 have been German victories. I definitely need to learn how to attack more with the Allies. Alright, hope you've enjoyed it.